Okay, this is a response to Brett Keane's video in which he complains that the logic of agnostics is flawed. So to take things in order, the first thing Brett does is to extrapolate. If agnostics can't prove or disprove the existence of God, then too they can't prove or disprove the existence of, in order, pink unicorns, Jesus Christ, Allah, pagan God, or comic book superheroes. Now, in the largest sense, I'd probably go along with all that, although his next statement, to the effect that all these things must be admitted because, quote, you cannot prove a negative, is in fact a cliche and not a tenet of logic at all. No, it's quite possible to prove negatives, usually with arguments in the form reductio ad absurdum, and indeed Brett must have such an argument, or how could he have possibly convinced himself that there is no God if he has not managed to prove to himself the negative, that there is no God? But yes, in a larger sense, it's perfectly reasonable to say that metaphysical phenomena in general, being at least practically, if not permanently, outside the domain of our empirical powers, there is certainly no technical way of excluding the possibility of their existence. Brett then asks rhetorically if this is logic and reasoning according to agnostics. And the answer, of course, is that yes, it is. As I said, the question appears to be rhetorical, and I assume the point of asking it was to express his displeasure with the idea that weird, fanciful creatures like pink unicorns or Superman must be ultimately admitted as possibilities if in fact there is no way to disprove their existence. This is not a logical objection, it's an aesthetic objection. And the reasonable answer to it is that the experience of human beings as they investigate the nature of the universe has been that as our investigations progress more closely into the heart of how things actually work, we find that the universe is not in fact set up to accommodate our sense of aesthetics. The idea that the universe should be elegant, simple, or even understandable is out of date. I would simply say that the universe, whatever it is under no obligation to conform to what you think it ought to be. In fact, the reverse is true if you want to survive. When I was thinking about this response, I decided I wanted to reference Max Tegmark and his article entitled Parallel Universes, which was published in January of 2003. You might be able to still get a copy of that article off the Scientific American website, I'm not sure. I just think it's a good illustration of just how much universe it's thought may really be out there, and just exactly how weird things might get the more closely you examine it, and just how little it is possible to know about what exactly might be in it. Okay, next Brett states that agnostics can't debate with theists, atheists, whoever, because they're, quote, flawed from all sides. I think this statement shows that Brett doesn't actually understand the nature of that kind of debate. For example, if I were to debate Brett, who I gather is an atheist, then yes, it's quite true. I can't prove or disprove the existence of God. That's my position. However, in order for me to engage him, I don't have to prove that God exists in order to destroy his position that there is no God. No, I only have to discredit his supposed proof that there is no God. If I can do that, then he is forced to admit that, like me, he can't prove or disprove the existence of God, since presumably he already believes it's impossible to prove the existence of God. Therefore, if I can show that his proof of the non-existence of God is likewise invalid, then he has to take my position. And in turn, if he can present an argument from the non-existence of God, which I'm forced to admit really disproves God's existence, then he could say that he had won the debate. So you see, there's nothing stopping me from debating Brett or a theist on the other side of the argument. Okay, after this, Brett makes a statement to the effect that his imaginary agnostic may at this point say that there's a difference between pink unicorns and God, and my comment here is that at this point, Brett is having a conversation with himself. That is to say, he's having an internal debate with his own self as the atheist and with an imaginary agnostic whose position he is also arguing. I'm saying it's a straw man. There's no need for me to make this proposition that God is more important than pink unicorns or whatever you want to imagine. I've already stated my case, which is that I know of no argument which can disprove the existence of God, or prove it, which is immaterial when you're talking to an atheist. And I am at this point eagerly awaiting to hear what new and fascinating argument he can make, which might enlighten me. At the end of his reverie, Brett makes the sudden pronouncement that, quote, the atheist bases his conclusions on process and facts. He follows this up with another pronouncement, quote, the atheist will honestly look at facts when they're presented facts. Now, at this point, he has backed up none of this. He simply made a claim. He's claimed, I'm a realistic guy. I see things the way they really are. Well, that's fine. Is there proof of any of this forthcoming? Let's have a look at the next frame. Maybe here at long last. Brett tells us, quote, the atheist can say, no God exists, nor do pink unicorns, quote, because the idea is not important enough to entertain. And that appears to be the extent of his argument. And I have to say, I'm really not impressed. I have to say, it sounds ontological. I'll reiterate what I said earlier. The universe isn't under any obligation to manifest itself in any form that you necessarily find aesthetically pleasing, important enough to entertain, however you want to express that. And the experience of human investigation shows that in reality the universe does not conform to the aesthetics of the people doing the investigations when they start looking at it. Quantum physics is the classic example of that. Albert Einstein refused to accept it. God does not play dice with the universe, he said. Quantum mechanics is practically an insult to the aesthetics of people whose ideas of human intelligence and the nature of the universe runs towards the logically positive. When human beings looked closely enough at the universe, they found that not only was it like nothing they'd expected, but that, in fact, at its finest levels of detail, it was completely non-deterministic. The idea that this or that aspect of the universe must conform to this or that idea of what is important enough to entertain is medieval. As medieval as the moldy theology of any theist. Okay, so then Brett asked why God is so important to agnostics, which is a follow-up to his earlier imaginary debate with that other imaginary agnostic who was talking about why God is more important than pink uniforms for God knows what reason. This is followed by the weird statement that, quote, they can't prove or disprove me, so I must be right. And there's a pretty serious flaw with that. My position is that I can't prove or disprove the existence of God. Whether or not I can prove or disprove your argument is another matter, and I've just pointed out that your argument at its core consists entirely of an aesthetic objection, an ontological proposition that things like gods and pink unicorns can't possibly exist because such concepts are not to you worthy of consideration. That is, they are aesthetically offensive to you, which I understand is how you feel, but it is not empirical logical proof of anything. And so I submit your argument is destroyed. Anyway, thanks. I think you're a real Socratic guy. You should brush up on logic, and this is all real academics. Bye-bye.